actual roster schedule for IE Sports Radio. We had our kickoff show this morning, which went phenomenally with both Taryn Rodriguez and Larry B. That was awesome. And then at 8 o'clock, we had Dan Vachelek, host of the Wisconsin Whistle. He did a great job bringing you coverage, and now we're at my show. And later today at 10 p.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time, we're going to have Big Mike bringing you more coverage of Super Bowl 59 and talking about their relative teams and where they will be headed into this offseason. So a lot of cool stuff. Really excited to get to talk about, the Super Bowl and the 49ers and where we're going. As you can see, I'm all decked out with my Niner gear. That's what I always do for the Super Bowl, regardless if they're in it or not. I'll be joined a little bit later by Larry Krueger, the great Larry Krueger, host of The Krug Show, also host of Niners Nightly over on KNBR. He'll be on here to talk about the latest rumors that circulate around the 49ers and a breakdown of Super Bowl 59 between the Eagles and the Chiefs. And finally, we'll be giving our score predictions for Super Bowl 59. But before we get to that, just remember one thing. We are brought to you by Planet Jerky, Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. This jerky is on a whole other planet. You can find Planet Jerky over at planetjerky.net or place an order for Planet Jerky. Or you can follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. And then we're also brought to you by Vital Apparel. IE Sports is proudly partnering with Vital Apparel, a brand that not only fits great, but also promotes and donates to mental health research. Use promo code IESR to get 15% off their comfortable and inspiring gym wear and help Vital Apparel on their amazing journey to support mental health and mental health research. So definitely check that out. It's really awesome. They do a great job. We're also brought to you by Seal the Deal Wax Seals. If you want to place an order for these wax seals, go to iesportsradio.com/seal the deal wax seals. Or if you want to follow them on Instagram, you can do that by going to go to Instagram at seal the deal _wax seals. And, of course, you can also follow IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, all this at IE Sports Radio. Also go to iesportsradio.com where you get a full catalog of all the shows we have to offer here on IE Sports Radio. Head on over to iesportsradio.com/shop to pick up some merchandise to help support the network. Hats, shirts, banners, whatever you need, we got it there. Definitely check that out. And you can also find IE Sports Radio wherever you find podcasts, maybe Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, you name it, IE Sports Radio is there. So check out the podcast and make sure you check out my streams, but everyone else's streams as well, by looking up IE Sports Radio wherever you find your podcasts. And of course, you can follow me personally at Dre Area Sports on X, Instagram, and on YouTube at the Dre Area Sports Show. Like, share, and subscribe. All good stuff. It's going to be a great time today. Like I said, Larry Krueger will be joining us later on the show. Might have a few others jumping on, but I'm not sure about that. But definitely Larry Krueger will be here on the show in just a few minutes. So before we get to that, let's take a break. When we come back, Adam, happy Super Bowl. Happy Super Sunday, Andre. Thank you, Adam. I appreciate that. But when we come back, we'll be joined by the great Larry Krueger talking about the latest news and rumors surrounding the San Francisco 49ers. And, of course, we'll be breaking down Super Bowl 59 and giving our final score predictions at the end of the show. You're watching the 3 and Out Grand Finale, Episode 3, bringing you wall-to-wall coverage of Super Bowl 59 right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
IE Sports Radio fans, this show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, single A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
Rise and shine. It's 4 a.m. The stars are still out. The sun is beneath the horizon, but it's time to punch in and go to work. The comfort of your warm-ups turns into the grinding out of your reps as the clinking and the clanking of the plates create a symphony of euphoria. There's no other feeling like it. Earn it, burn it, and take what's yours. IE Sports Radio has proudly partnered with Vital Apparel, a brand that not only fits great, but also promotes and donates to mental health research. Use our code IESR to get 15% off their comfortable and inspiring gym wear and help them on their amazing journey to support mental health. Go hard, take part in your iron therapy, and be strong. Because when your mental health is as strong as you are, there's no telling how far you'll go.
Okay, guys, welcome back to 3 and Out, IE Sports all-day coverage of Super Bowl 59. We have a whole catalog of shows. We are at 2 shows already, and we have more coming up today. We have later on at 10 o'clock, we have Big Mike. 11 o'clock, we have Aaron Yowell. 12 o'clock, Alden K. 1 p.m., we'll have Ricky K. and Ralph Calise. 2 p.m., Larry B. and Matthew Owens. And that will lead us right into kickoff. And then the post-game show, hosted by Larry B., where you see a lot of us, all these names that I listed off to you, a lot of us will be on there talking about the Super Bowl, catching up with each other, and just having a grand old time here on Super Bowl Sunday. So definitely something to look forward to. And we're going to be bringing that coverage all day long. So really, really cool stuff. Very, very cool stuff. So in a few minutes, we'll be joined by Larry Krueger. We're going to talk about some of the latest news surrounding the San Francisco 49ers. But let's do a quick little preview before Larry gets here about Super Bowl 59. Now, Super Bowl 59 is going to feature both the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, when we break down these two teams, right, in total offense, the Eagles are the number 8 ranked total offense in the league, while the Chiefs are ranked number 16. Now, the Chiefs haven't had the greatest offense all year, but what they have had is the best defense all year. They are clutch. They get the job done. Now, when it comes to total defense, this all comes courtesy of Fox Sports. The Eagles are the number 1 defensive team in the league, which is great because that's what you need against the Chiefs. Chiefs are number 9. But when it comes to the playoffs and executing in the clutch, it just seems like the Chiefs always seem to manage to be there when it matters. Not to mention the refs help them out. But how do you get around that? How do you stop the Kansas City Chiefs in their pursuit for a three-peat, which I hope they don't get? Well, the problem with the Chiefs is that they don't fuck up. They don't make the big mistake that costs them the lead or costs them, the game late in the game, especially. If they make a mistake, it's usually very early on or beginning of the third, but never in the fourth quarter. So I think the fact that these guys don't make mistakes, they don't make the big mistake, it causes the other team to really stress when they're playing against the Chiefs because they don't want to make that big mistake that's going to cost them the game or put them, in a bad spot. Let's say down by 8 in the fourth quarter. That's what you don't want to be. You don't want to be down, a touchdown and an extra point. Adam writes, how do we petition for both teams to lose today? Yes, I would say yes. We need to. We absolutely need to. Ralph says, Andre, have a super Sunday. Again, thanks for all your support for this great streaming event for IE Sports Radio. Today, we have a great show. Let's go! I agree. It's going to be a lot of fun. But, excuse me. But, of course, look, the Eagles have the number 1 ranked defense in the league. They have the number 1 rated pass defense in the league as well. And then against the run, they are number 10 against the run. So I think that when it comes to running the ball, I don't see Isaiah Pacheco or Kareem Hunt making a big impact in this game. You can't allow them to have a big impact in this game because we know defensively through the air, your defense is going to be able to keep Mahomes at bay. It's the broken plays is where Mahomes strives the most when he has to run and throw on the run. That's when he makes his most dynamic plays. Now we know that Travis Kelce has slowed down this year. He hasn't been as productive as he has been in recent years. In the game against the Buffalo Bills in the AFC title game, Kelce only had 2 catches for 19 yards. He was pretty much a non-factor. And if we go back to last year in Super Bowl 58, he was a huge factor, especially in the second half when Dre Greenlaw got hurt and had to leave the game because of a ruptured Achilles. Then we saw Travis Kelce become open more often and exploit the fact that Oren Burks was covering him out on the flat. Now, fast forward to this year, guess what? Oren Burks will be out there again, not for the Niners, but for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, can Oren Burks cover Travis Kelce even on a year where maybe age has caught up with him? Maybe Taylor Swift has realized this guy's kind of old. If he loses, I'm out. Who knows? It'll be interesting to see if Oren Burks can actually cover Travis Kelce, because last year he could not cover him. And Travis Kelce burned us in the second half, which helped lead the Chiefs to their second consecutive Super Bowl championship. So it's funny how Burks on this team when he was on our team last year, and he's in back-to-back Super Bowls. I mean, that's pretty crazy for him. Another thing, too, is that we know that the Chiefs are not as good against tight ends. But then again, Dalton Kincaid only had 2 catches for 13 yards. But Josh Allen really spread the ball around. He had 3 catches for Mac Hollins, 3 catches for James Cook. Shakir had 6 catches. Amari Cooper had 4 catches. So he was really spreading the ball around to try and keep this defense, kind of on their toes. Another thing for the Kansas City Chiefs, a big weapon that they're going to be using is Xavier Worthy. Against the Bills, he had 6 catches for 85 yards and a touchdown. He's going to be their deep threat. His longest was a 26-yarder against the Bills, but I think they're gonna send him deep and really stretch out the the Eagles secondary. And let's not forget, they still have DeAndre Hopkins, who's tall, lanky guy, good in the red zone as well. So that's another asset for the Chiefs offensively, especially when they get into the red zone. Now, if you ask me, I think this game is going to be very similar to what we saw against the Bills, where I think it's going to be a close game throughout most of the game, and then something's going to happen. May it be a bad call by the refs, may it be a mistake by the Buffalo Bills. I'm sorry, I did it again. A mistake by the Philadelphia Eagles, but I think that's when the Chiefs will gain that advantage. May it be an 8-point advantage. May it be a 4-point advantage. Something to where it can't be an easy score to tie or win the game. And at the end of the day, I think the Chiefs are going to come out victorious in this game. I think that Patrick Mahomes is going to have a brutal day against this defense. And when I say like the Buffalo Bills game, I don't mean by scoring. I think this is actually going to be a low-scoring game. I see the final score of this game being something in the realm of like 24-20. And I think that a lot of the scoring will come late in the game when the defenses become kind of gassed and worn down. I think that, when you look at the Chiefs offense, they don't beat you on the big plays. They beat you on your fuck ups and on the bad calls. So I think that's what to pay attention to. There's been a lot of attention being put on the bad calls by the refs for the Chiefs. And even Travis Kelce brought it up in the interview. And so I think that there's a chance that the NFL could be trying to, kind of course correct when it comes to calling games against the Chiefs because they don't want this to be a game that's dictated by bad calls by the refs. And so you may see not a lot of calls being made because of the fact that they're trying to keep it more balanced and they don't want the refs to be the reason why the Chiefs or even the Eagles get the advantage over one another. But we'll see kind of how that plays out. Because at the end of the day, I don't think the NFL cares. All they care is that the ratings are up. They're smashing the NBA. They're smashing MLB. They're at the top of the mountain right now when it comes to ratings and views. So they're killing it. And as long as they get the Chiefs, Mahomes, Andy Reid, Taylor Swift in the Super Bowl, I would say the NFL is more excited to have Taylor Swift than Travis Kelce at this point. She's like another player on the Chiefs. To get her there, they love it. Absolutely love it. But we'll see how it plays out. We'll see if the refs come through with a balanced call for this game. But like I said, I don't see Mahomes having a really big game. I see him throwing for about 189 yards. The defense is going to be all over him. Pretty much similar to what we saw last year against the Niners. I mean, if you look at last year's game, the Niners didn't let him do anything. Obviously there were turnovers. He threw a pick in the beginning of the third quarter. Pacheco fumbled to Randy Gregory. And the score was really, really, really close because the fact that you have a Steve Spagnuolo defense that really pins down the opposing offenses. But like I said, if you look at last year's game, he was under pressure. He was having a hard time getting rid of the ball, finding open receivers. And so the Niners really held down Patrick Mahomes and made it really tough on him until the mishap on special teams gave them the ball in the 30-yard line. They scored a touchdown. They got right back in the game. And then it was a close game from there on out. So I see it kind of similar to that. Now, defensively, I think that Steve Spagnuolo, his main target is going to be how do we shut down Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley is having an amazing season. He's Offensive Player of the Year. He is essentially the Christian McCaffrey of last year. And it's incredible what he's done this year. Against the Washington Commanders, he ran for 15 rushes for 118 yards. He had 3 touchdowns. The first play of the game was a house call by Saquon Barkley. A 60-yard run for a touchdown. So to me, if you're Steve Spagnuolo, what you want to do is make sure that he does not get going, having extra guys in the line, stuffing the box, putting Jalen Hurts in a pocket passing position. They want him to be a drop back passer and not be able to hand that ball off to Saquon Barkley. They're going to try and make this team one-dimensional, a pass-only team. And on the other side, the offense of the Chiefs, their goal is to get a lead early. Get up 7 points, get up 10 points, get up 14 points, and turn this Eagles offense one-dimensional. Make it so they can't give the ball to Saquon Barkley. Saquon can't run for 15 rushes for 118 yards. They would love nothing more than to see Saquon Barkley have 10 carries, 13 carries for 84 yards. Perfect. For the whole game with no touchdowns. So I see the Chiefs taking big strikes early to Xavier Worthy and trying to get in that end zone early on to put pressure on the Eagles offense to abandon that running game and make Jalen Hurts a pocket passer. Now, the Chiefs played a lot of man coverage against the Niners last year. They started off playing a zone coverage, and Brock Purdy was carving them up. So they switched to a press man coverage, and that's when it became harder because the Niners receivers were not good against man coverage, especially press man. So I see that happening again, but the problem is that Jalen Hurts actually has better numbers against press man coverage. He eats up man coverage. So you could look to the Chiefs to run a zone defense and just keep Saquon at bay. Let's see here. Adam writes, the way Saquon has run this year, I don't care if I'm down 20 in the first half, I'm getting the ball to Saquon. And I agree, but when if you're down 20 points, I don't know if you have the time to keep handing the ball to Saquon, hoping he'll break one. I don't. And that's what they're going to try and do. They're going to try to exterminate Saquon Barkley's offensive ability early on in this game. Can they do it? I don't know, but we'll see. One thing I'm worried about, too, when it comes to the Eagles' defense is that their coverage against tight ends. Now, look, this could be a game where Travis Kelce has a big game. Zach Ertz had 11 catches for 104 yards against the Eagles. And they had a hard time covering Zach Ertz. He was damn near open every time. So if they take that same strategy and apply it to Travis Kelce, then Kelce could look to have a really big game against the Philadelphia Eagles if they cannot guard the tight end position. And that's going to be tough. That's going to be really tough. You know, Jaden Daniels, you know, he threw for 255 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. But even in that game, they had 3 turnovers, not on Daniels, 3 fumbles, and that led to 21 points off turnovers for the Eagles. So that's a big swing. The final score was 55-23. It still wouldn't have mattered, but still, that's a huge swing. But even so, after the first 2 turnovers, it still felt like the Commanders were still in the game. Now, will they feel the same way against the Kansas City Chiefs? If the Chiefs go up 14 points, are the Eagles going to feel free and loose and be able to run the ball and run their offense and get back in the game? I don't know. With the bright lights of Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans flashing down on them, it may choke them up. It may cause them to panic and switch up their game plan. As Adam said, we trust in Vic. Vic Fangio is an experienced defensive coordinator. He's been a coordinator for the Bears, the Niners, the Eagles. But the problem is this, is that Patrick Mahomes has favorable numbers against Vic Fangio. And Vic Fangio hasn't beaten Patrick Mahomes in his career. There's so many numbers that are going against the Eagles in this game. My biggest fear is Jalen Hurts. My biggest worry, I should say, is Jalen Hurts. Is that if they get down early, can he lead them down the field multiple times through the air to get them back in the game? I don't know if he can. Is he a good quarterback? Yeah, I think Jalen Hurts is a really good quarterback. But the same thing, the same premise on Jalen Hurts is what I had for Jimmy Garoppolo. If you force the Niners to rely on Jimmy Garoppolo, they're probably going to lose, and they did. If you force the Eagles to lean on Jalen Hurts, I don't think that they'll be able to pull this one off. I don't. Now, I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm dead wrong. But the Chiefs' experienced defense, they do that to you. They make you stress because they don't make the big mistake. They don't make the big fumble. They don't make the big interception that sways, the energy towards a different team. They don't do that. And so because of that, it causes you to stress out. I've said this before. The Kansas City Chiefs, to me, are the NFL's version of the San Antonio Spurs. When the Spurs were on their run and they were a dominant team, this is what they did. They didn't make mistakes. They were fundamentally sound. They were solid. They executed when they had to. And that's what these guys are. I've seen comparisons to the Chiefs saying, oh, well, the Chiefs are kind of like the Golden State Warriors back in their Kevin Durant years. No, because the Golden State Warriors turned the ball over like no other. Sloppy passing. They just had a lot of talented players. I know. I'm a Warriors fan. They're more like the Spurs. They just don't fuck up. They don't fuck up. And that puts pressure on the opposing team to also not fuck up. Because they know if they do, the Chiefs are going to take advantage of that. Like against the Bills. The first down that Josh Allen somehow didn't get, even though clearly he got it. What happens? Chiefs go down and score a touchdown. And that fucked everything up. So, without further ado, let's introduce our guest of the day. He's none other than the host of The Krug Show over on YouTube, also host of Niners Nightly on KNBR, the great Larry Krueger. Larry, what's going on, man?
What's up? How are you?
Bro, This is amazing. I'm great. So in case you guys didn't know, I'm going to nerd out really quick. So just buckle in for this one. So in case you guys didn't know, I grew up listening to Larry Krueger on the radio. And in fact, my wife, when she lived in San Mateo at the time, I lived up by Santa Rosa. I used to drive down. We had a long distance relationship for a couple of years. On my ride home from her house, I would listen to Sports Phone 680 with Larry Krueger. Best show I've ever listened to in my life. And to be honest, Larry was one of my inspirations for even starting a podcast in general. Just the way he does it, it just inspired me to want to do it. So to have you on here, Larry, it's fucking incredible. So thank you so much for coming on here, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Love being on, and happy Super Bowl Sunday to everybody. And, man, we got a lot to talk about.
We do. And real quick, let's talk real quick about the Super Bowl because we'll talk about Niners in just a minute. So I want to start with that. Do you think that the Chiefs are going to try and take away Saquon Barkley and make the Eagles a more of a one-dimensional offense? What do you think Spagnuolo's game plan is against the Eagles?
It's really interesting. Warren Sharp had a bunch of stats on this, and one of the things that's really interesting is that the Eagles run tons of three wide receivers, 81% in the playoffs. They've been in three wide receivers, and they run the ball well out of three wide receivers, and the Chiefs struggle to stop the run in three wide receiver sets. So I would expect you're going to see, a lot of, you're going to see some wrinkles for sure. I do think Spags, who normally likes to play man, when he looks at the numbers and sees how well Hurts has handled man-to-man coverage, is probably going to throw a bunch of zones at him in this game. The other thing is when you pressure Hurts, he's a totally different player. So I would expect Spags to play a lot of zone, blitz, a lot of zone blitzes. If you look at the numbers, the man blitzes Philly can handle, the zone blitzes Hurts struggles with. So I think they're going to play a lot of zone. I think he's going to blitz them from all angles. Get ready for a lot of exotics. They're going to force the ball out of his hand. And, I love the under in this game because I think both defenses are going to play that bend but don't break. Fangio's great at taking away the deep ball. Spags is going to force Hurts to get rid of the ball early and check it down underneath to, Goddard. I think Goddard could have a real good day if you're looking for a prop bet. But yeah, I like the under. I think both teams are going to score, but I think both teams are going to, the defenses will win the day. So I kind of think this is a defense rules the day kind of a day. And I think you're going to see a lot of futility, maybe some turnovers, maybe some sloppy football. And at the end of the day, I think the Chiefs are going to wind up winning the game, even though I believe the Eagles have the better roster. The Eagles have the better roster. They have the better talent. They're playing better. But this is Mahomes' time. This is Andy Reid's time. Mahomes is the best. Reid's the best. Taub's the best. Spags is the best. Chris Jones is the best. And at the end of the night, I think Kansas City is going to be on top. And I do think I would take Kansas City to the under on a teaser.
Well, even last season, in Super Bowl 58, the Niners had the better team. They had the better roster. They had more talented stars. But at the end of the day, the Chiefs pulled it off. I mean, you figure you take them to overtime and you lost to Patrick Mahomes on a game-winning drive. I mean, you lost to the best in probably the best way. Or I should say in the worst way for the Niners. But in that game, though, the Niners defense held Mahomes. I mean, their offense couldn't do much of anything throughout most of that game until the fumble on the punt return that got them back in the game. So I really see the Eagles kind of having that same kind of defense against Mahomes in the offense, where they're not going to be able to do much. But I think the Chiefs are going to try and go deep early because they're going to try to get a lead early to force the Eagles to kind of abandon that run game as quickly as possible. But if you're the Eagles, you can't, because Saquon Barkley's Offensive Player of the Year. The guy's the Christian McCaffrey of last year. Now, are they going to lean more heavily on him and run the ball better than the Niners did with McCaffrey? We'll find out. But defensively,
the numbers say no. I mean, last year the Niners rolled in with the number one offense. Spags held them to 3.6 a carry and the longest run was 11 yards. 2 years ago, the Eagles rolled in with the number one rush offense. Spags and company held them to 2.6 yards per carry, and their top running back had 16 yards on 7 carries. So Spags is really, really good. To me, the difference, though, is going to be this is always about Mahomes. And I don't think anybody's going to nobody's made a big deal about it today or up to today. But when we get to the post game, I'll make a prediction right now. Kansas City wins the game, and in the post game, all you're going to hear about is, man, Patrick Mahomes got disrespected on Thursday night on the MVP voting. I mean, and there's no question he did. I mean, he's Patrick Mahomes. I mean, he is the Michael Jordan of his time.
Yeah, I know.
And he finishes behind Jared Goff in the MVP voting on a year where he led his team to a gaudy record in the number 1 seed, and the road to the Super Bowl in the AFC rolled through Arrowhead. I mean, I don't know, man. To me, that was really, really. To me, I mean, he didn't have a great year individually, but I mean, I think that's what the Chief players are going to be talking about. Oh, the disrespect. You know, it's one thing to finish behind Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, but behind Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Saquon Barkley, Joe Burrow, and Jared Goff, and have 16 less votes for the MVP than Jared freaking Goff. I mean,
he played
seriously,
terrible too.
If I was Mahomes, I'd be using that as motivation, and I don't think they'll talk about it before the game, but if they win the game afterwards, I bet you it comes up.
Absolutely. And really, he should have been, 2 or 3 in that MVP voting. But to be behind Jared Goff, and we saw what Goff did in the playoffs. He played horribly. He was right there with Sam Darnold. I mean, both of them completely choked away that game in terms of their overall play. Multiple turnovers, bad decision-making. But yet, I guess statistically, they said that he's better than Mahomes. But out of all those quarterbacks, everyone who was up there for MVP awards, who would anyone take on their roster immediately? It's Patrick Mahomes. Second would be Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson, not Jared Goff. And I was saying, even early on this season, the Lions' biggest weakness is Jared Goff. And a lot of Lions fans were like, oh, you're just jealous. Ah. And look what happened. He went out there and he shit the bed. I was like, oh my God, this guy. And of course, I mentioned Sam Darnold. He turned back into a pumpkin. He turned back into the Sam that we all knew. And hey, you know what? He had a good year, but it is what it is, right? I mean, I didn't see Sam Darnold.
It makes you appreciate the way Brock played in the second half against Green Bay and Detroit, and the way that he played in Super Bowl 58. I mean, there's a ton of pressure in these moments, and not everybody can respond to the pressure. And Goff kind of showed what he was. Darnold showed what he was, and Purdy, I think, has shown what he is in the playoffs. So I think the playoffs isn't like some secondary conversation. I think the playoffs is who you actually are. And if you, it really separates the men from the boys. I mean, there's all kinds of decent quarterbacks out there, but how many good ones are there? There's all kinds of guys who can do it, in the regular season. How many guys can do it in the playoffs when everything's on the line, when you're getting everybody's A game and the defensive coordinator's best game plan, and they're putting their best foot forward. So, I think it really shows how incredibly valuable the great quarterbacks are in the NFL. And people talking this week stupidly about, maybe if you trade this guy and that guy to Cincinnati, you could get Joe Burrow. If you talk for a minute about trading for Joe Burrow, you're not a serious content creator. You're just not. You're not serious. You're not serious if you're talking about trading for Joe Burrow. You're not. You're clicks and clickbait, and you're doing it for alternative reasons, because nobody with any credibility believes that Joe Burrow is going to be traded. So
they would
to
never
even go down
Joe
that
Burrow.
road is just so that just shows, the people that are just in it for the clicks and for the money, they'll throw anything against the wall. But I mean, anybody entertaining Joe Burrow as a trade candidate, seriously, check yourself.
I agree. In fact, at one point I also thought that the whole T Higgins, go out and signing T Higgins was dumb. I was like, they don't need to do that. They want to spend that kind of money on that. But then, you know what it was, man? I'm telling you right now. I listened to one of your streams and I was like, you know what? He's got a point. Ayuk being out more than half the year. Debo being Debo. He's slow. He can't beat man. You got Pearsall, Jennings, and Cowing. I don't know if that's enough. I don't know if that's good enough to get you through half the year. And then there was this. Debo Samuel has been granted, him and his agent, Tory Dandy, permission to seek a trade. Now, I know you had talked about this as well. You kind of spoke on this from the Adam Schefter tweet right here. This is big news that you dropped. Do you want to tell everybody about this?
Do I want to tell people about it? Well, Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport are both reporting this morning that that the Niners have allowed Debo to shop, and his agent to shop for a trade. And now it's just a matter of, first of all, I've been talking about this for weeks that, that I thought Debo was probably gone and that Ayuk is diminished and is probably going to miss at least half the year. And even in a year where, and the 49ers just went, receiver in the first round last year with Ricky Pearsall.
Yeah.
So I know nobody's like, wants to talk about receivers. Everybody wants to talk about offensive linemen, defensive linemen, and I get it. But the reality is that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch don't have a year to throw away. They don't have a year to be like, we'll just draft a receiver and we'll just see if it works out. And if it might take 2 years for him. No, they don't have that kind of time. It's go time for them. So in their go year, I think they're going to have to add wide receiver to the list of needs, and it's going to go at or near the top. And it's a rough thing because it's not a good wide receiver year. So it's not a great year to need a wide receiver in free agency. There's T. Higgins. Now, Mike Lombardi said that talk at the Senior Bowl was that the Niners might be a sleeper team for T. Higgins. And the more you look at it, the more it makes total sense because they want to be good next year. They're going to need a dynamic player. They're probably going to ask Brock to take a little bit less. If I'm Brock and his agent, I'm not taking a little bit less unless you're going to spend that extra money that you're saving on me on a T. Higgins or an offensive lineman or both. So then if you look closely at the draft, and I already have extensively when it comes to the receivers, and there aren't receivers. I mean, you're not going to be able to do this in the draft. I mean, I really doubt that highly. I mean, there's Tez Johnson from Oregon. He's a tiny little slot receiver. He's about 150 pounds. He's probably going to be a third-round pick. There's Trey Harris from Ole Miss, who's really special, and you could get him in the second round most likely. But if you don't get Trey Harris in the second round, man, then you're looking at day 3. And there's 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 guys that I really like on day 3. But day 3 wide receivers to have to play a significant role on a team that fashions itself as a Super Bowl contender. So, I looked at the free agent market at receiver a few weeks ago, and, I was thinking at the time, well, maybe like a Tutu Atwell or a Rondale Moore, somebody who can really run, and I still think those guys are viable. But they're not, that's not Ayuk. That's not Debo. These are more complementary type players. Yeah. So, I don't know if it's trading for Devontae Adams, trading for Garrett Wilson, trading for Tyreek Hill, signing Darius Slayton, signing T. Higgins, or if they're going to go in the draft. But they, in addition to trading, Debo Samuel, they need to get somebody because they won't be able to win the Super Bowl or even contend for the Super Bowl with just a day 3 receiver added to this mix or some secondary, speedster wide receiver added to this mix. They need a significant player at receiver. I think they are aware of that, and that's where I think the Higgins rumors are coming from.
Well, on top of that, I was also talking about what you had posted about him selling his house in the Bay Area. I mean, that's huge news. Yeah, I mean, the fact that he's selling his house in the Bay Area tells me that he's already 1 foot out the door, that he's already expecting on possibly going somewhere else. But
yeah, I have a buddy who works in real estate who called me 3 weeks ago and said Debo's putting his home in Morgan Hill on the market, and looks like he's definitely selling his home, whether he's leaving or not. He's selling his home. But I got the feeling at the end of the year, the way he played in the Miami game, to me spoke volumes. That was like, get me Mike McDaniel, bring me here, bring me here, bring me here. It's like he's begging the Dolphins to sign him. He let it all hang out in that game, and I haven't seen him play like that with that kind of reckless abandon, that kind of speed, determination in quite a while. So, I mean, I'd have to go back to the Eagles game in Philly, the last time I really saw him cut it loose like that. So I would say look for the Dolphins.
Yeah. I mean, he played his ass off in that game, and he hadn't done that almost all year. So it was kind of like, wait, what's going on here on a game that didn't really matter to either team. So we talked about that.
Don't expect a lot back. Don't expect a lot back. I would say if you get more than a 5th round draft choice, I'd be shocked.
I mean, the main thing is saving the money on Debo is what you would get in return. But no, you're not going to get a receiver, impact receiver in return. Like you were saying, it'd be like a 5th round pick. God forbid a 4th round. I'd be like, oh my God. But you won't get a lot in return. But it'll free up cap space to go after a receiver like a T. Higgins, who at this point seems way more of the better choice than Deebo Samuel. Now, there was also talk about Devontae Adams, that he was interested in coming back to the West Coast. What's your take on Devontae Adams? Do you think that he would be an answer for our need at wide receiver?
See, I don't think he's an answer. Why? Because, the wide receiver core on any team at any level, but especially in pro football, they have to complement one another. So, you can't have 5 possession receivers, and you can't have 5 burners that can't run routes. I mean, you have to have guys that complement one another. The Niners already have their short and intermediate route running, chain mover, continuity piece receivers, and that's what Devontae is at this point in his career. He's not a super dynamic down the field guy. He's a back shoulder throw guy. He's everything within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. And I just don't. If you have Pearsall, you have JJ, they're not going anywhere. What you really need is Garrett Wilson. You need somebody who can run routes, but also run sub 4.4. You need somebody who can. I mean, Ayuk ran your deep routes, and you're not going to have him for the good portion of the year. And then after he comes back, who knows if he can even still run those routes? He had a major injury, so to me. JJ is your possession guy. Cowing could be a little bit of a speedster, but I don't know. I don't even think I would really factor him in. I just, because he has strength deficiencies and he needs to get a lot stronger. But they need somebody who can run. They don't just need a receiver. They need a dynamic receiver that can run sub 4.4 or 4.4 flat. They got to have somebody who can really move. So I don't think Devontae makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, he, like you said, he is more of a short, a 10-yard kind of receiver.
He's older.
He's older. He's more of a diva as well. But he is a legitimate number one in the sense that the defense has to account for where he's at on the field. So you do get that. Baseman says Tyreek Hill. I know you had talked about that in the past. I think Tyreek Hill would be amazing. Unfortunately, you'd have to put up a huge trade package to even get that guy. But that would be something if they got Tyreek Hill to replace Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, and he just stated he doesn't want to go anywhere. I have people on my Twitter saying trade Deebo for George Pickens. I think the Steelers would love to move off of Pickens, but Pickens is a diva who doesn't block, and the Niners receivers, you have to block. It's a big part of their MO is their receivers block. So I mean,
does T. Higgins block? I mean, do we know if he's even a blocking type of receiver? And I haven't
seen
much of him. He's a big body.
T. Higgins he's a 6'4" receiver. I'll say this: T. Higgins at the end of the year looked like a true number one. He was amazing. I mean, I had him on my fantasy team. I couldn't believe I don't even love T. Higgins, but I had him on the team, and I was like, well, I guess I'll put him out there because he just kept playing really, really good ball towards the end of the year, and he looked great. So, I don't know what I got to think T. Higgins is going to get broken off to the tune of $25 million a year. So I don't think he fits either, to be completely honest. They're probably gonna, Garrett Wilson would make a lot of sense. Why? Because he's on his rookie deal. But you're gonna have to trade draft picks.
Yeah,
You're probably gonna have to give a 2 this year and a 2 next year or something like that. It's not gonna be an easy package. But you know what? Garrett Wilson would be who I'd go after for sure. Somebody who can run, or maybe I would try to get a Darius Slayton in free agency at a reduced cost. But you got to have somebody who can run. You can't. The Niners. One of the problems the Niners have is they're just too damn slow. They're slow on the perimeter on offense. They're slow on the perimeter on defense. They can't score quickly because they lack speed. They need more speed.
Well, and that was a big topic too at that press conference when you're like, "Hey, you said your team looks slow," to Kyle, and you're like, "What does that mean? Does that mean more Jacob Cowing?" And he kind of backpedaled a bit, like, "Well, it's not really what I meant, but it's true that. But they've been slow all year. They don't have a burner. They don't have anyone that can stretch the field, and they really need that kind of dynamic player." Speaking of dynamic players, we heard earlier, last week, that Myles Garrett wants to be traded. Now that's been a big topic, especially on my show. I've been talking about that all week long. Do you think that getting Myles Garrett, is that a viable option you think the Niners should explore, and you think they have explored that option?
Well, I think it's just really important when you have a player that's that dominant to be in the deal flow and figure out where he's going to go and decide what you want to offer based on where he's headed. I mean, if he's going to the Indianapolis Colts, then you know what? Maybe just let him go. But if you think he's going to wind up opposite Jared Verse on the Rams, then maybe you may want to, try to prevent that from happening. So I think you got to be interested for the block. I think you got to be interested just for the potential. I mean, they've been looking to try to, the Niners have their stated goal when they took over this new regime in 2017. We want to build around the D-line. Okay, they brought in Buckner, or they brought in Bosa in year 2, and they brought in D Ford. They got to the Super Bowl with Armstead and Buckner inside. They got close, but they haven't been able to get it done. And now their defensive line has regressed significantly. You got to be interested in Garrett just because he's such a beast. But I will say this. If you truly have confidence in your personnel department, and if there are guys in that personnel department that truly have confidence in their ability to draft and find winners, I don't know that I'm going all in on multiple draft choices this year for one 30-year-old defensive lineman when I'm staring at a crop of defensive linemen that's so unbelievably deep and talented. I mean, in my world, I would trade back from 11 into the 20s and then just draft like 5 or 6 defensive linemen of all shapes and sizes. There's all kinds of guys that can hunt the quarterback in this draft. And I know Garrett's intriguing, but I think, it's one guy. And if you have one guy, then all of a sudden he gets hurt, you wind up being the Warriors in the finals against the Raptors.
Yeah.
And it's like you're not deep enough. You get beat by a deeper team. Depth matters in the NFL. Now, Myles Garrett's spectacular. If I could get Myles Garrett and trade future picks or players and future picks, and hold on to my arsenal of picks this year, then yeah, I'm very, very, very interested in Myles Garrett. But if I have to trade my picks and I think I would this year. I think I would rather just trade back from 11, garner more picks, and draft my 5 favorite defensive linemen and take my chances.
Yeah, but can you imagine Myles Garrett opposite Nick Bosa? I mean, the kind of havoc they would, raise on the field would be extraordinary. We haven't seen that since when they had D Ford. So, they would be damn near unstoppable. But I agree that if you get him, but still,
here's the thing though. You put yourself anytime you go all in. Look at it this year. The Niners went in the last couple of years. They went all in on Trey Lance. How did that work? They went all in on Javon Hargrave. Hargrave played 3 games this year. when you go all in on a player and he plays 3 games, you're cooked. And the
Yeah.
Niners were cooked. Their D-line was super thin. By the end of the year, they had no sacks in like the last 6 games. Just poor Sorensen couldn't do a damn thing about it, so his butt got fired because he couldn't dial up any pressures at all. He just sat there watching his D-line get no pressure week after week after week, doing absolutely nothing. Hoping that it would all work out. I mean, it's just they need depth. I mean, they need numbers. They need at least, I would say, 5 defensive linemen. They need at least a couple ends, probably 2 or 3 defensive tackles. I don't like what they got up front. They got Evan Anderson. They've got Malik Collins. They got Bosa. They got Leonard. They got Jordan Elliott. The rest of those guys, Khalil Davis, Drake Jackson, Robert Beal, all these guys. I mean, there's just a bunch of dudes, just a bunch of guys. I mean, I love Drake. He's a great friend and everything. But I mean, come on, man. They need to have some serious upgrade of defensive line talent this year, whether they get Myles Garrett or not. They have to add 3 or 4 big time defensive linemen.
Well, and then we talk about the players that bringing back Robert Saleh, now bringing in Gus Bradley. I mean, do you think that is going to help bring in more talent defensively? Maybe some of the players that played with these guys or that played with Saleh over in New York. Do you think some of those guys are going to maybe want to come over and say, hey, I want to follow my old coach and play for San Francisco?
I mean, there's always potential for it. I mean, I would say if you said who's likely to come, I mean, a lot of people have talked about Jamie and Sherwood. Mm-hmm. Sherwood would not be bad. I mean, converted safety, former Auburn star who's coming off a year where he was fantastic. I could definitely see Solomon Thomas coming back just because of how hard he plays, and he is kind of a harder playing version of Kevin Givens. I could see them letting Givens walk and going with Solly, who's got a little bit more professionalism, a little bit more motor, a little bit more effort, energy. So I could see Solly coming back. Other than that, it's hard to say. Maybe Chaz Surratt. He's a 4 or 5 linebacker. They're going to need, as I said, they're going to need multiple linebackers. Chaz didn't play a lot for the Jets, but Robert Saleh during the Hard Knocks seemed to be pretty impressed by Chaz Surratt and his talent in camp. So I'd say Sherwood and Surratt and Solomon Thomas, maybe Ashton Davis, maybe DJ Reed. Those guys all could be in play. As far as Gus Bradley, he comes from Indy. I mean, they have Ebukam and DeForest Buckner, Kenny Moore, but I don't know that there's a, EJ Speed, the linebacker, might be somebody that could come with Gus Bradley. I will say this, man, it was nice to see Sam Womack develop under Gus Bradley there in Indy this year. I mean, that was a mistake from last year. They never should have got rid of. I mean, really, the last 2 years they kept Isaiah Oliver and Devondre Campbell and just guys that just couldn't play a lick. This year you're keeping Isaac Yadam and you're cutting Sam Womack III. Why? I mean, that was just idiotic.
Well, it's like you were saying is because they gave them contracts. So they were like, well, we paid these guys. Let's just hang on to them.
Yeah, I mean, let's justify bad free agent decisions by cutting good young draft choices. I mean, that's like personnel malpractice right there.
It's terrible. They're just like, well, we spent the money on them. We got to see it through. Like, no, you evaluate their talent and what they're able to do based on everybody else. And then you take the best player and move forward with them. And I agree with that whole sentiment that you put out there earlier last season was that, they went with the guys that they gave contracts to. And that bit them in the ass. Devondre Campbell was awful all year. He had a couple of good games, and then he had the big game, the big fuck it moment against in the Rams game where he just laughed. It was like,
which I predicted 3 weeks ahead of time, and I'm like, you got to get this guy out of here. I mean, seriously, it was so obvious to me that this guy was not going to be able to handle. I mean, it was obvious what he was there for, right? He was a stopgap place filler for Greenlaw to get healthy. So we all knew once Greenlaw got healthy that he was going to be out. The only debate was, what would be the health status of the rest of the unit and how it would all come together. But man, 3, 4, 5 weeks before he went crazy, I'm like, this guy you're going to have to literally usher him off the campus as soon as you take him out of the starting lineup. And those 12 men on the field penalties, Devondre Campbell. He would not come out of those games and of that game. And Sorensen covered for him. If I was Sorensen, I never would have covered for him. I would have said Devondre Campbell's unprofessional. He refused to come out. That's why we got the 12 men on the field penalty. It's on me. I'll own it. But, we're in the process of cutting this guy's ass. And instead, he just covered for him. And when I asked him about, hey, Campbell, why is Campbell playing over Winters? He gave me this long diatribe BS answer about experience and this and that. And the guy, you saw Kyler Murray run by him for
Everyone
a
ran by
50-yard
him.
touchdown. You saw Geno Smith on the backbreaker touchdown in the Seattle game at Levi's. Devondre was 10 yards down the field in front of him, and he never even got a finger on Geno because Devondre Campbell has no lateral agility to speak of.
He's so top heavy.
It was just
like
it's an unbelievable screwed up signing. Not to mention the guy showed up at practice every day 15 minutes late because they gave him an ability to ride the exercise bike. It's like, dude, if you need to ride the exercise bike and have to be 15 minutes late for your position period, you know what? I don't want you. I'd rather go find somebody in the draft who's hungry and is going to show up at practice on time, not some guy who's so old and so decrepit that he needs to get on an exercise bike for 15 minutes before he can get out to practice. I mean, watching that guy jog out to practice in the middle of practice every single day, and I'm sitting there going, who the hell authorized this? And if this guy needs to be on the exercise bike for 15 minutes before practice, then he's too damn old. And guess what? When he got on the field on Sundays, guess what we saw? He was too damn old. So they screwed that up in the worst way.
So we're talking with Larry Krueger, host of The Krug Show on YouTube, host of Niners Nightly on KMBR. Real quick, as we round things out, we saw this being posted by Dan Rossini that the Niners have begun contract negotiations with Brock Purdy's agent, and they feel like the deal could be completed soon. What's your take on this? Do you think this deal gets done sooner rather than later, or is this going to drag on to mini camp and all that?
Dude, I've been talking about this for weeks now, and I felt like I'm trying to convince almost everybody that I've streamed with about this, and nobody seemed to see it the same way. Now, my whole point is that what is the deadline for Brock Purdy's contract? Okay, some people are like, well, you got to get it done before the season starts. Well, no shit. Thanks for that. Other people are saying, hey, you got to get it done by training camp. But come on, this is a quarterback. This is your starting quarterback.
He's got to be there the whole way through.
Your starting quarterback can't roll out there in training camp. He's got to be there when you install everything in mini camp. So then I started thinking about it, and I'm like, you know what? They badly need a receiver, and there aren't any receivers in the draft. So if they're going to get anybody in free agency, they're going to have to get that done with Brock Purdy by the beginning of free agency. So I put March 12th down as what I think the deadline was. I've been talking about it for about a month now, and nobody agreed. I mean, I seriously asked everybody, hey, do you think? I kind of think the deadline's March 12th. Other people are like, well, no, it's probably more like May. It's probably more like the mini camp after the draft and this and that. And I'm like, well, dude, how are you going to go sign a significant receiver that you desperately need if you don't even know what you're going to pay your quarterback? So I would say March 1st is probably the unofficial deadline. Get it done with about a week to go before free agency when the agents really start to hammer down on these agreements, and then hit free agency running, sign your T. Higgins or your Drew Dahlman or whatever. I really think that the best way to handle free agency is the way the Packers did this last year. The Packers usually don't sign a lot of free agents, but this year they signed two. Xavier McKinney, who wound up being absolutely amazing for them, and Josh Jacobs, who was equally amazing. And I think the 49ers ought to copy that approach, which is build through the draft, get your guys in the draft or as undrafted free agents. But go get one or two pieces in free agency. And if it was me, My one or two pieces would be T. Higgins on offense, and maybe a Drew Dahlman, but maybe a fast linebacker, maybe a Sherwood, maybe a Willie Gay. Maybe even a free safety if because I don't love the free safety class. Maybe a corner, maybe a DJ Reed, but I think I would go after like two. If I could get T. Higgins and DJ Reed, let's just say on the perimeter, two free agents, and then do the rest in the draft.
Yeah. No,
but that means get Purdy's deal done by definitely by March 12th. But
and that makes sense.
It done by March 1st. Which would be
that makes
that
sense.
Would be in line with what her report was today, which is that they think the deal's going to get done soon. It's February the 9th. That soon, I'd say, is a month, and that is perfectly in line with exactly what I've been saying, which is get it done before free agency, so that if you want T. Higgins, you can go sign him. Because how do you sign? First of all, how do you sign T. Higgins if you don't have a starting quarterback under contract?
Yeah.
Why is a receiver going to roll the dice on his career? He may be catching passes from Tanner Mordecai for all he knows. It's like he's not going to sign, and you're not going to be able to get that receiver unless you have the money and unless you know who your quarterback is. So to me, both of those things point to Brock's contract gets done before free agency.
I agree. I think it sounds good. Larry, I want to thank you for coming on here and talking Niners, talking Super Bowl. We got about a minute left. Final score prediction. What do you think it is for the Super Bowl?
Ooh, I'm going to say I think it's going to be 27-24 Kansas City.
All right. I say 24-20. I say 24-20. It'll be a 4-point lead, and they got to try to get a touchdown at the end of the game, and they can't do it. Chiefs win, and evil continues to prevail in the world. Larry, what do you got cooking for the rest of the week? Are you streaming later today or on Monday?
Yeah, so before the Super Bowl, I'll do a little stream with John Lund. I'm going to pop over on his channel, trying to help people out on Super Bowl Sunday. I personally will not be streaming, other than I just stream this to my channel here as well. But I will be streaming in the post game. In the post game, that's my jam. Catch me in the post game. We're going to have a monster post game. We're giving away a Ricky Pearsall autographed 14 jersey in the post game. It'll be myself, my son, Dan Coach Emilio, Ryan Smith, Frank Red, maybe Cyrus Satsa. Some of my crew will be in the house. We'll talk a lot of Purdy. We'll talk a lot of Debo. We'll talk T. Higgins. We'll talk about the Super Bowl. We'll give away the Pearsall jersey. So yeah, catch the Krug show. As soon as the Super Bowl is over, I will walk out of I'm cooking for the fam today. I'm doing homemade nachos with pulled pork on top.
Nice.
And then we're going chicken wings, little buffalo wings. So it's going to be a bit busy day here at the Kruger house.
Is Kev in the creek, or is he?
Kev's here. He's in the house, so he'll be on in the post game, and I'm fired up for that too. So
all
really
righty.
Appreciate him.
Thank you so much, Larry. And guys, stay tuned. We have one more show coming up, or the next show coming up is with Big Mike over right here on IE Sports Radio at 10 a.m. He started already, so we're going to get out of here. Enjoy Super Bowl 59, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace!